Well, it was 12 months ago today that we were told the Victorian Premier slipped and fell on wet steps at a holiday home on the Mornington Peninsula. It was a nasty incident, and in an interview many weeks later, as Daniel Andrews told us himself, he could barely breathe at the time and was groaning in pain. Indeed, in the same interview, his wife Catherine said she feared he was going to die. Now, thankfully, an ambulance arrived for the Premier in just 26 minutes after it was called. The Premier received the critical care he needed, as every one of us should, and he, of course, survived to tell the story. But far too many Victorians don't. Tragically, in the last 6 months, as many as 12 people, including 4 children, have died in Victoria following delays in 000 ambulance calls. And despite the Premier promising he'd hire more people to man the ambulance call centre, the number of workers hasn't changed at all in 2 years. In a state that's still struggling with the impact of record lockdowns, Victoria's broken ambulance system is only making matters worse. Victorian Liberal MP Brad Battin is the Shadow Minister for Police and Emergency Services. He joins me now from Melbourne. Thank you for your time, Brad Battin. An ambulance came for the Premier, of course, as it should. I'm not saying it shouldn't have come for the Premier, but every other Victorian deserves an ambulance when they call it. We know 12 weren't as lucky, and they're not here to tell their story today, are they?
No. What we've seen over the ambulance crisis and the 000 crisis for a long period of time is, first and foremost, as you said, everyone should be treated equally. But when you listen to reports and you hear a mother who says, breathe, Alicia, breathe, as they're on hold for 15 minutes, and eventually when the connection to the ambulance does connect, they're actually at the hospital already. We have seen failures from this government for such a long period of time to invest in 000. And exactly as you said then, Peter, the staff numbers actually declined partially during the COVID crisis. And now we see numbers equivalent to what they were 2 years ago. And all we get from the government is continuously talking about reports and reviews. And this week, the government went on record and said even the newest review, which is about your listeners' lives, if they call 000, they're going to stamp cabinet in confidence on it. And why? Because the government knows there's a crisis. They know this is going to cause them a lot of political pain. But what we're actually saying is it's causing more pain to families at home who have been on hold. And there is 12 people now who have died waiting on hold for an answer to get someone in an emergency, to get an ambulance out to them. It's not good enough here in our state. We have to make sure that our system works. We have to make sure that the ambulances to respond as soon as possible. Everyone knows there's been an emergency. Waiting on 000 would be the worst experience ever.
Yeah, and you're right to point out, of course, they're not waiting for the ambulance to arrive. They're waiting on hold to have that first request to say, I need an ambulance at this address, send someone urgently. They haven't even got through past the hold button. It's worth noting, I think it's worth noting, and we'll say it again and again and again, but Daniel Andrews, he's been either the Health Minister or the Premier, so run the state, for the last 11 of 15 years. 11 of 15 years. He's been the bloke in charge of this system. How much responsibility does he bear, and how much responsibility will he take?
On the first question, how much should he bear? Daniel Andrews should bear the entire brunt of this now. It's now at a stage that he's had enough information, he's had enough health ministers that he's gone through, including him as health minister, and he's had enough time and money to fix the crisis, and he hasn't. How much will he take blame for? We're probably going to say zero. The man that used to come out and say in front of the cameras, I will take responsibility for everything under the government I lead, as soon as he gets behind the scenes, he's more interested in Labor's spin and protecting his brand than he is actually about protecting Victorians. People have died.
Well, what would you do differently, Brad?
Spent more time on a media release.
I'm going to give you an opportunity. It's all good and well for me and you, and quite rightly, I think, to put the Premier under some pressure. But you could be the minister in November this year if the election goes your way. What do you want to do differently?
Yeah, first and foremost, we've already said we'd work with the union, we'd work with the associations, and we'd get more staff on calls ASAP. If the Andrews Labor government had have put the funding forward 6 months ago, we wouldn't be talking about 12 people that had died. We would have been talking about the fact there was 43 new callers online now, not 0.6 less. So if I get elected with a Matthew Guy Liberal Nationals government, we will put more staff on and we will make sure that we reach those targets of your call being answered within the 5 seconds so you can have the confidence. We need to rebuild that confidence here in our state so people can call 000 and know that an ambulance is on the way. That is essential. That is essential to the recovery of our state. So we will make sure that we'll have the staff there. We will work with the reports that have been already put in place. I would actually turn around, I would review the Ashton report if we got access to it. But if it was still undergoing at the time, I would scrap it and get on with the fact we need to fix the system, whether it's technology or people.
All right, Brad Battin, thank you for that. We'll stay across this issue as always too. It's a huge one in Victoria. Ambulances not turning up. You can't even get through the calls.